Thank you for your time this morning. Just so you know, we will be recording this session. I am Nicole Hall. I am the Business Development Manager for Restaurant Retail at the Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation, and I will be your moderator for today. Your presenter, Tom Rakowski, from the SBDC at the University of Maryland, will be your presenter. Just some general housekeeping rules. We're going to have everyone's microphones and videos disabled during the webinar. Any questions that you may have, please feel free to list them in the chat box. You can send private and publicly sent messages to everyone. And if you have any questions following today's webinar, please feel free to email me. My role as a business development manager is to first and foremost be a resource to you as a business in the county. So please feel free to start that dialogue and we'll follow through with you post the webinar today. The Emerge Stronger campaign, CEO Bootcamp, is sponsored by Pepco Holdings. They've been a great partner here in the county and really wanted to help support business owners as we transition through COVID into business sustainability for your organization. We're working in partnership with FFC First, as well as Bowie Bick, to present to you a great webinar series of 4 presentations with a really dynamic presenter who has a ton of restaurant knowledge and experience that is really going to help you stand up your business through COVID and really create a dynamic and effective business plan and strategic plan to help guide you through COVID and really insulate you from any of those external stressors or pressures that may attack your business. So we really wanted to just welcome you. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat box. You do have a workbook that will work in tangent with the presentations and will help you build that strategic plan at the end of the 4th session. So please use the activities in there as the speaker goes through them and will guide you through. This is a 4-workshop series. So today we're kicking off with our accounting and finance strategies. And then we'll follow up with pivoting to a new reality of new revenue streams in 2 weeks. So all of this information will be in your workbook that you've received. And if you haven't, we will link it in the chat box throughout today's presentation. And as I said, please feel free to ask questions in the chat box and we'll get to them during the end of each session as the presenter progresses. All right, but we're just really excited to have you here. And I'll turn it over to our presenter, Tom Rakowski.
Hey, thank you so much, Nicole. Today, I'm going to talk about 3 basic things: fundamentals of restaurant finances, restaurant financials during difficult times, really what's happened after COVID-19, and then the mindset for success. Now, I'm going to go through these pretty quick, and it's really just to get everyone on the same page so we can talk about concepts, not necessarily the nitty-gritty of numbers, because me as a restaurateur, although I had to use them, I didn't love the numbers aspects of it. And then we're going to have plenty of time to work on these numbers individually, either with a counselor, as Nicole has spoke about, and then a little bit about where I am. I work for the SBDC, and what we do is we're part of the Small Business Association, and we do 3 main things. We do training, we do counseling, and we do technical assistance. Now, the great thing about this program is that SBDC is totally free, especially during COVID-19. It is 100% free to use our services, and we do things like this. We do training, or you can sign on one-on-one for counseling. We also talk about, the technical assistance, about the loans, loan packaging, and things of application. So a little bit of everything. A little bit about me. I have been in Maryland pretty much my whole life, born and raised in Baltimore. I've been in the restaurant business over 30 years. I started washing dishes at a little restaurant called Angelina's Restaurant in Northeast Baltimore on Harford Road, if anyone's familiar with that area of the world. And my love of food really came out of, I was one of 5 children, and my mom was a nurse, and she'd work odd hours. So I'd always come home and there would be a note, and my father just did not like cooking. So I started cooking, and I started putting the chicken in the oven, the roast in the oven, and just adding my own flair to it, and it really became natural to me. So food was always first for me, and it was always seeing the smile on my faces and making my family happy. And that's really how I got started into it. I went on to work in hotels, restaurants. I went on to culinary school, food service management. But at the end of the day, food is truly what I love, and that's how I ended up here today. So, what are we hearing out in the marketplace right now? Now, as you know, restaurants historically very tight margins, not a place where you have to watch every penny. And what's happening right now is that those margins have gotten tighter. But the good thing is we're definitely seeing the trends upwards. And the reasons we're seeing trends upwards is people are getting comfortable into it, but the restaurants and the restaurateurs are really changing the way they're looking at things. They're looking at different opportunities, and we'll get into some of the specifics on opportunities in the next seminar, but we definitely want to talk about what gets us there first. So it's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to feel like this is hard right now. It's hard for everyone, but definitely looking up. And some of the one of the great restaurants that in my neighborhood that I see who has completely changed their model is a place called Frankly Pizza, and they've literally gone from a sit down restaurant to 100% pickup, where you actually order the food online. They open up their online service at 4. You order your food, then you come and pick it up. It was a really neat way that they have changed the way they're doing business. And if you're thinking about doing a change, one really important tool, something that I really, I would say that everyone on this call uses it in one way or the other, but maybe doesn't call it the SWOT analysis. And I'll give you the example of if you're going to buy a car, you look at all the pros and cons, and that's what you're really doing is a SWOT analysis. You're saying, okay, if I buy a new car, there are going to be less maintenance bills. If I buy a new car, it'll probably get better gas mileage, or it'll be more reliable. But then, opportunities and strengths and weaknesses, those first two are really internal. Those are what you can control. And the other ones are like opportunities and threats. So like a threat on a car is gas prices. Gas may go up. You can't control that. Other opportunities are, traffic. Hey, it's, during COVID-19, traffic has been a lot better. So, that's a quick way to look at a SWOT analysis. And that's what we need to do as business owners, as restaurateurs, to look into, when you're changing your business model, what and why you do that. And that's where the SWOT analysis comes in. Now, before you go anywhere, we're going to talk about these fundamentals of restaurant finances. You have to have, as they say, you need a good base before you build your house, right? You need a good foundation. So your good business decisions require courage, but also important is up-to-date, reliable data. So we'll get into, again, the specifics of that, but we're going to talk about some generalities. Profit and loss statement, the balance sheet, the cash flow. Those first three are really what we talk about as historical information. You kind of do those on a period basis, and you're kind of looking at those afterwards. And then we'll get into the declining budget. It's, in my opinion, one of the most important tools you can use, especially today, to really look at where your operation is and what it is and make some real-time decisions. And I would say it's, think of it like as a knife. The more that you use these tools, the better you are going to get at them. So it's you got to get comfortable with them, and just doing them last minute just to get your taxes done. I would emphasize that that's not the best way to do it. I used to do it 100%. That was me, and it really took me into my third year of running my restaurant. I didn't really explain that. I had 2 restaurants for 11 years, most recently, and it really was my third year. And it was 2008 and the financial crisis, and I didn't have my books in line. So that's what really kicked me into getting a bookkeeper and learning about it. Now, the first one, the profit and loss statement, it's basically what your sales are minus what you spent to get those sales. And if you have money left over, that's profit. If you have, your zero left over, that's break even. And that's your baseline. Or if you're losing money, which a lot of restaurants, especially in March and April, we're running at a loss, and that's completely understandable. But this is the history. It's like the analogy of sitting on a boat. If you look behind you, you see the wake of the boat, the foam of the water. You can't do anything. But that's not what's propelling the boat. What's propelling the boat is the engine, is you, is the management. So it's a great place to look and say, hey, this is where we were, but you need to turn around and look to where we're going. Another tool is the balance sheet. Now, the balance sheet it really breaks down your assets. So what you own minus what you owe. I'll go back to the car analogy. Most people can't afford to buy a car with cash in one swoop, that you pay it over a month. And that's really what, this is saying is, yes, I have assets. Yes, I have liabilities. And it kind of lets you manage them on a piece of paper. All right. The big thing about the balance sheet is, especially today, is it really has a lot of implications on COVID-19 grants and loans. Whether or not your PPP loan is forgiven affects how it shows up on your balance sheet. So it's really important that if you don't, which I didn't, go ahead and get yourself a bookkeeper to help, or maybe someone at the EDC or at the SBDC can help you navigate through these balance sheets and where exactly these line items go. Now, the next one is the cash flow statement. So basically, again, is you make X amount of money. We use a car analogy. You have to pay your rent, you have to pay your mortgage, you have to pay your car payment, but you're not paying that all at once. So you figure out what you can afford each month, and at the end of the day, if your cash is positive, you're making money. If your cash is negative, then you're losing money. And it's real important to know, because again, back in March, April, you may have had some cash reserves. You may have gotten a PPP loan, so you're fine on the cash. But tweaking those areas of where and when, the money is coming in and going out is super important to know where your next step is, what the next decision is. Now, in my humble opinion, the declining budget is what I call it. It's called other things. It really is, in my opinion, the one thing that is super important to use on at least not a daily basis, but also a weekly basis. I used it every day. And the example I'll give you is the one for labor. Now, up on the top of the chart right there, you have a forecast, is your budget. Basically what you predict is going to happen in any given week. And then the one below that is your actual. That's what you're writing down, and you're monitoring. Okay, my sales weren't as high on Monday as I thought they would be, and my labor was a little higher, but I'm going to use that guy and do a little more prep, or we're going to go ahead and have him hand out flyers in the neighborhood, or we're going to set up work out a new way to do to-go food. And then as you go through the week, you're monitoring those sales as opposed to your budget, and get to Wednesday and you've already done some extra prep, so you don't need as much labor, but you're doing just as much sales, if not a little more, and it's going to bring that labor percentage down. So by looking at it every day, you may not be able to correct it that particular day, but you can definitely look out in the near future, or make adjustments in real time to add certain different aspects of labor and have them do different things, as far as if this person was usually on the grill but no food's coming in, have them cut some stuff up for the day, or prepare other items. So that's the super most important thing, I think, on a daily basis, is really to go through and look at on a daily basis what your labor is, what you're spending on dry goods, what you're spending on everything. This is just one slice of the pie, and I picked out labor. I think everyone can relate to labor, but this is used in every aspect, in every cost, from paper to food costs to what you're preparing for preparation. And just to kind of recap those sections, I know we went through them quickly. Again, it's just to get everyone on the same page as far as discussing these concepts. But the past does not dictate the future, but it can help with future decisions, meaning that you can't change your P&L. It is what it is, but it's going to give you some great resources and tools to make decisions going into the future. And then also, you need these financial statements to determine profitability, but also anyone who applied for a loan or anyone who's applied to even open a, to do something beyond their present situation has to get these documents to banks, to prospective investors, to all kinds of things. And remember, it's the history, it's what you've done, and it really is essential to moving forward for loans, reporting compliance, all those things that as much as I love just cooking food, they're a necessary part of running a business is having this up-to-date information to make things super important. So I'm going to take a brief a brief pause right here and ask Nicole if she has any specific questions or ideas that came up, or if anyone has anything that they've seen out there they'd like to say, we'd like to talk about it.
Sure. Great job, Tom. I don't see any questions right now in the chat box. I just posed any questions to anyone.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so we'll move on to section 2 then. So what has changed? So these restaurant finances during difficult times. So, during these uncertain times, you need really good data. And that data is really what's helped the resistant restaurants successfully pivot, and they took these risks by using that SWOT analysis, by saying, hey, what can work, what cannot work, what's going well, what's going poorly, what can I not see, and putting pen to paper and using that up-to-date, financial information to really make a calculated risk on what the next step is for moving the restaurant forward. Some good ideas, and we talk about good to great, getting through difficult times. Normally, a good practice would be understanding your current cash flow constraints, and typically those were pretty predictable through normal times. But now it's really about becoming great and understanding your new revenue opportunities, your costs, your shifting cost patterns. And it's really, and what's exciting right now is that it truly is changing. And what I mean by that is I was just sharing with the group earlier, just driving today, I see so much more car traffic. I was out this weekend, you see so many more people out and about. So people have made adjustments, and now it's our time to capitalize on those. But as we look, typically, a restaurant was either, breaking even to about 15% profitability. Back in March, April, May, June, that projection was negative 15% to 8% profitability. And it really has to do with the margins and how the margins have shifted into where we are today. So the trends that we're seeing is definitely a lot of people moving to go food, pick up, outdoor seating. And it's important to look ahead to see these trends. It's important to see how they affect your bottom line. An example would be if you had a staff that was mainly at, $2.13 an hour plus tips, then, your labor cost was much, much less. But now you're not, relying on that as much, and you've kind of converted some of these people into to-go staff, and their wage is higher. And you need to look at how how those margins affect your bottom line, and where you can tweak using, different aspects of it. So, for example, can you get stuff pre-done? Can you get onions already pre-cut instead of cutting yourself? Yes, they may be more expensive per the pound, but relatively speaking, you're going to save on labor, and that may be your more important place to go after right now, is labor, as opposed to the cost of onions. And it's also looking, and asking yourself these important questions. What changes do you need to make as far as your outdoor space, your indoor space, your signage, et cetera? And then also looking even 2-3 months down the road, what happens once winter arrives, and making those adjustments now. And then again, going back to that SWOT analysis and looking at exactly, what you have in place, what you need to get, and making those adjustments. And some of this stuff is time sensitive, as far as, I just tried to get a desk for my daughter, and I went to IKEA. It was like a 2-month wait. So, you have to, so I went and bought a door and some milk crates. You have to make things work, and that's okay. That's okay for right now. to make those things, because what's important is taking care of yourself and taking care of the guests and taking care of your business. All right. And again, we have to understand that just a simple cost is much broader than we think. And I'll give you some examples about, a bottle of wine. If you sell wine at your restaurant, it's a much different price to sell it, in a restaurant than you can at a liquor store. But now we have become retail operators. We can sell stuff retail, you know, with the great partnership that Maryland has said, hey, we can sell wine and beer and wine and mixed drinks to go. So that price is not the same retail as it is in house, and you have to adjust that. Again, labor, tipped versus non-tipped. And these costs are shifting because your labor costs, maybe your labor cost is coming down because you're able to manipulate your hours, but you need to do a more marketing via things that is, as far as online services and third party ordering system fees. So there's a lot of cost that, although some may go down, others may go up. And again, this is why this is so important to look at those declining budgets and getting that information correct, so you understand really important where you are and what you need to do to move forward. So the question becomes how. If you have great product and people are truly craving this great product, right? Is it something that you can increase the price on? Because, some things you're going to think about, can I increase the cost to make up where my deficits are? And I would say the answer is yes to some, no to others. Are they coming to your restaurant because you're the only game in town right now and it's very convenient? It may be the case for some things, i.e. they don't want to go to, the liquor stores far away. Why can't they just get a bottle of wine from you? So, again, you don't want to be there, taking advantage of anyone. I don't think anyone on this call would be in this business if that was their feeling. I know that, in my heart. So you definitely want to look at where you can take increase and where you can. You don't want to arbitrarily just raise prices across the board because you're going to turn off the guests. And again, it's looking at that SWOT analysis, looking 2, 3, 4 months out. And as this curve is changing and sales are starting to come up, you're going to get through it, and there's no need to gouge anyone, so to speak, in order to get just to the next month. All right. And it's looking at those popular, menu items again. If it's something that people truly crave and are going to come to you regardless, absolutely, with good messaging, increase that price a little bit. So they can still enjoy it, and you can still stay in business. I mean, it's 100% okay to be able to stay in business by increasing prices a little bit, just to make things work. All right. So just to recap that section, the big thing is I say, or I had a manager who once told me, he's like, Tom, you got to slow down to speed up. You need to allocate time to work on your business. So it's taking that step back. It's really scheduling it. I think it was Tony Robbins who says, if you talk about it, it's a dream, it's hope. But if you schedule it, it becomes reality. So to sit down and actually schedule time for you to be in your building or outside of your building, sitting out in, your newly erected parking lot that is now your outdoor seating, and just putting pen to paper and putting your thoughts down. What can change? Looking at your place in a different way. I'll give you this. I had a manager, Rick Cheeseman, and I walked into the restaurant one day and my head was down, and I walked right to the back of the house and just walked by. They had gotten new carpet and I didn't even recognize it. And he's like, Tom, do you have a penny on you? And I said, yeah, I probably do. I have one somewhere. He goes, well, have you seen a penny? And I said, yeah, I've seen a penny. And I said, where's this going, Rick? And he's like, well, what's on a penny? And I said, excuse me? He goes, well, what's on a penny? Is there a president on the penny? Is it Mickey Mouse? And I go, no, it's a president. He goes, okay, what else is on the penny? And I had to think, and I go, I think there's a date on it. And he goes, well, where's the date? And he goes, are there any words on there? And And the point was, he's like, Tom, there's something that you carry almost every day of your life. Maybe not so much anymore, but you've seen on the ground, or you picked up, and you truly don't know what's on it, in detail. And he's like, the same thing. You walked right through the restaurant. You didn't even notice we got brand new carpeting. Not that you had to say anything, but it's take that step back, slow down to speed up, and look at exactly what you can do to impact your restaurant. And again, I'll say it again, slow down to speed up, allocate that time, and then also take your calculated risk by asking, how much can I afford to invest? Again, we talked about, the balance sheet and those items. If you're investing money into your business, you don't have to pay that all at once. You can pay it over time, especially if you're getting a new, system, or you can pay it over time and work that into your balance sheet. But by having all those numbers and having all that data, you're able to make these great, calculations to move your business forward. Again, I'll take a brief pause here and check in with Nicole and see if there's any questions or comments that we need to address.
Sure, awesome. Yes, we have a question from Monique Hunter. She asked, how many years does the bank want to see positive cash flow, balance statements, and profit and losses? I guess if we were looking to acquire or start a restaurant.
Yeah, well, to start a restaurant, if you're starting a new restaurant, it's based on what your projections are and what you think you're doing. As far as getting into it, I would reckon somewhere that you would need to see some kind of progression into getting cash positive in order to someone give you a loan. What time frame is that? I would definitely reach out to either a counselor, or, and again, the SBDC is 100% free. The EDC has resources. There's resources online. It really depends on the type of business and how fast you think that can become positive, meaning that there's something called a burn rate. How fast are you burning your assets and cash in reserve before you're out of business? And if a company, if you have your information in line, if you have your numbers, it's really easy to have that conversation and move in a positive direction. I know you're looking for a specific answer, but it's hard to give a specific answer to an individual restaurant. And again, I'd reach out to the SBDC. I'd reach out to the Prince George's EDC
Yeah.
for specifics in that matter, because they're definitely professional, can give you a really good, and they have these banking relationships too, which is great. One thing I learned, and I did not use the SBDC or an EDC when I was starting my businesses, and I'm really upset that I didn't, because it probably would have saved 3 years, some hair off my head, and things of that nature. They're really super people out there, and there's a lot of resources out there. We'll get into the mindset in a second here about getting help.
Sure. One other question is for those businesses you mentioned how to kind of weather the storm and being able to look at your business and understand trends. What will be some of your recommendations for a restaurant to endure the slow season that we know is coming in January, February, especially in times of COVID?
Yeah, I'll touch on that a little bit here, but we definitely get into a lot of that in the next seminar. It's definitely, if you look at places like, I was just watching Founding Farmers, and they literally have changed their restaurant into not only a restaurant where you can sit down inside or outside, but half of the restaurant is now retail, which means
Mm-hmm.
you can buy a brunch kit to go. You can buy all kinds of different food to go, because with everyone being at home, I mean, as much as some people think they're great cooks, they get kind of tired of the same food. And to be
Yes.
able to package,
Mm-hmm.
complete meals, not only for your family, for yourself, in a freezer where you can come in. So if you could sell them dinner that night, and then, plant the seed, through some great marketing in the package, or, and say, hey, don't forget, we have great meals to go. We'll have you set all week. You come every Monday, we'll set you up for the week.
Mm-hmm.
And really thinking outside the box. But that's what I'm seeing a lot of folks doing right now, to be successful moving forward. That's just one. But again, we're going to go through a lot of those examples in the next seminar also.
That's a great idea. Great idea. Thanks, Tom.
No problem.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to go ahead and talk about the mindset for success. And it's the power of mindset. And I'm not here to say, hey, let's all be, warm and fuzzy and kumbaya. It's painful. It's painful for me to experience a little bit in some, people that I'm helping in restaurants. It's painful to see, restaurants fail. It's not an easy time to be in right now. Um, but what you do need is you still need that great data. And I'm getting a little feedback. Uh, Sorry about that. I'll read this. That data itself does not have feelings, but our mindset and how we feel can impact how we interpret and what we do with the data moving forward. It was facts don't have feelings, and it's really how do we separate, because I mean, every day of my life, when I was in the restaurants, that's your baby, so to speak, and you definitely have attachments to it. So, again, to step back and really, take that, SWOT analysis of your life in the business, it's really how you need to move forward. All right. Now, the power of the mindset. So, good, accurate, up to date data is the essential first step in building a resilient business. The second is a can do mindset. And again, I'm not saying, that every day you wake up and you're going to feel great about it, because some days you're not. But it's being able to, be able to lean back on the facts and the data and really, it's okay to have this feeling of uncertainty. All right. It's okay. In fact, it's human nature. It's human nature to feel, the way you do in times of crisis. It's this so-called, you have this scarcity mindset. Oh no, what do we do? And you kind of, how do you say, you want to conserve resources. You want to, close ranks around you and really, um, for me, during 2008, I got scared. I truly was scared. You had fear. Um, but it wasn't until, I called a mentor of mine and he was like, what do you have? I go, what do you mean? What do I have? You have a business, granted that it's not doing the best thing right now, but you got to be grateful for what you have. And as you start getting into that positive mindset that and looking at the positive outcomes and what really works, and I love being around the people that I worked with in my business. And it was just that mentality started turning the tables for me, started looking. It's the same time when I got my bookkeeper, because I was not good at numbers. But the second I got the bookkeeper, it was so much easier to look. And I'm grateful for that person, um, and you need to really go against that first feeling of scarcity, and you got to go with your gut. Why did you get into this business? You got into this business because you truly enjoy making great food and taking care of people. And this is where, in my humble opinion, is going to get you into the next step of abundance. And it's also, I'll talk about some myths that we have when we're in these mindsets. That, myth number one, that cheaper is better. And again, I'll bring you the onions. Cutting onions and not, buying a bag of onions and then cutting them yourself. It'll probably take an hour to cut 50 onions or a half hour, whatever time. But if you bought them pre-cut, what do you save? Yes, your cost for the product is up, but relatively speaking, it's pretty light. But you are saving that other time, and maybe that's time you can take sitting down with that person and developing them to the new procedures that you have for COVID-19. It's really deciding on what your true cost is and getting through to the next step. So, the biggest thing here is again using that SWOT analysis and looking at every aspect of what makes up the cost of a final product. It's not just the stuff inside, it's the labor, it's the overhead, it's everything else. So it's really taking your time. All right. Another myth out there is either you're too small, too large, you can't pivot. And I'll give you some real time examples. Hooper's Crab House, they're Eastern Shore, and what they're doing is they paired up with Giant. So you can now order crabs at Giant, and Hooper's comes with their truck, and they cook them right there, and you can pick them up. So what does that do? It gets, it sells product. It reduces labor because you know exactly what you're selling and who to. Bagels and Grind. I'm here on the campus of the University of Maryland right now, and Bagels and Grind is here in Prince George's County at the University of Maryland. Uh, but the students all went home. There was nobody here. Hotels were empty. I mean, it was ghost town. And that's where they were based out of. They were based in a university and a hotel. So what did they do? They started selling their bagels in Potomac, Maryland. They would drive them out. I want to say, don't quote me on this. I believe it was either a farmer's market or some kind of satellite site. But that guy says that's what saved us. That was what put us over the top. So thinking outside the box. And now that school's open, I drove by today. I actually saw people in there. I was excited. Medium Rare. Medium Rare is a restaurant that paired up with Stroh Snyder's a store, which is, they sell all kinds of, construction things and house. But in their parking lot, you go and you order online and you pick up your food to go. And they did it at a time at 5:30. So at 5:30 in the afternoon, your restaurant typically isn't that busy Monday through Friday, and you're really setting up for the night. So this way they were able to cook 20 to 25 meals, package them up, ship them out. And I figured out the math. It was about $2,500 in revenue on one day. And it was a great idea. Java Nation, here's a company that started a second location in the middle of this. Actually had to delay their opening because it was right smack in the middle of that March announcement where you couldn't open restaurants. They did a similar thing. They were doing packaged meals to go where you could buy, a brisket dinner for your family. And then when I got there, they did a great job on secondary marketing of selling larger things to go, prepackaged food. They had all kinds of different alcoholic drinks, and not just a bottle of vodka. They had pre-made cosmopolitans, pre-made margaritas that you could buy to go. It was a great little idea. Caddies in Bethesda did a similar thing where they were doing a different meal every night. So on Monday you get crab cakes, and they had it pre-done. And what this does is it allows you to focus on a few items and not have this huge inventory. So it was a really great idea for them because they were able to, again, reduce their labor, and then they were able to reduce their inventory and really focus in on what was making them great. So kudos to those. There's 5 examples, both big and small, many locations, one location, and they're all doing it in different ways. So again, and I know some of the owners, and most of them just said, hey, it was the natural thing. And it was, for Bagels and Grind, it was actually an employee who made the suggestion to do that. Mindset myth number 3, I'm in this alone. And it's hard not to think that you're in this alone because there's a weight on your shoulders about, just looking, making that rent payment, paying the purveyor off. And, at this point, yes, there is support out there. I think there's another round coming in. But a lot of the sources have been depleted, but it looks like another round is going to come through. But it's getting with your local, SBDC. It's getting with your local, for everyone on this call, the Prince George's EDC, and really seeing what's out there and what's not. It's looking to your neighbor. Is it pairing up with your purveyor where they can give you a discount on product that you could sell in your restaurant as a retail, as a prepackaged. And it's okay. It's okay to get support from different initiatives that are out there, federal, state, local, industry, company. There's grassroots. I've seen all kinds of GoFundMes of all kinds of different things. There's different formats. I saw a really big push of folks buying gift cards and then using those for the restaurants to help first responders, to help hospital employees. Mm-hmm. And then if you're in a position, as we say, the recovery is coming back down, I say it's a V as we're heading back up the V, back to a normal revenue stream. By no means are we there yet, but some industries are doing better than others. Pizza places, for instance, are actually doing better now in some instances than they were. And if you're in that group, what can you do to help your fellow people? Maybe you have a need for another employee. Maybe you can ask your next door, hey, I know your guy, you had to lay off some people. Hey, I need some people. Maybe we could, until this thing gets back to normal, cross-utilize some employees. Or, hey, you know what? I really would like to close on Sunday. I need a day off. but I have all this extra product, maybe you could sell it in your restaurant or your store, or vice versa. There's a lot of interesting campaigns and relationships being built in this, and it's great to see neighborhoods come together. So don't think that you're alone by any means. Um, it's human nature for, at least for me, was not to want to ask for help. But there are so many good people out there who are willing to help, who want to help. So please start with what you know best. Start with the community here. Start with who's on this call. Start with your neighbors. Start with the Prince George's, EDC. Reach out to the SBDC of Maryland. There is a lot of help out there, and we really truly want to help. Believe us. So kind of just to recap, section 3. Sometimes you must slow down to speed up. And I love saying this name. I'm going to read so I don't mess it up. But there's a ice cream place called Mrs. Moo's Corner at Spider Hill Farm, and they had opened and they were doing their thing, but it just wasn't as fast as people were used to. And what they ended up doing, they were getting some negative feedback. I think in one instance, an employee was kind of didn't feel great about themselves, so the owner shut down. I don't know if it was for 1 day or 2 days, and just to recount, just to say, hey, what are we doing? Is this right? Is this right for the community? And really kind of revamped and retrained and then reopened. And we had people on the call earlier today telling us about these great desserts that they have, these milkshakes that have cakes and pies on them. So it sounds like, hey, they had to stop. And, in the restaurant business, we use the term in the weeds, and to give that visual is, if you're in the weeds, you can't see what's over the weeds. You can't see tomorrow. And it's really pushing those weeds aside, chopping them down, closing for a day, closing for a few hours, revamping your hours to really see what is there, what you can sell, what you can't, who's on your corner, who can help, who can't, and move forward. And then also with gratitude, scarcity disappears and abundance appears. It is true. It's a law of nature. Whatever you focus on will expand. And if you focus on what you have, if you focus on getting better, I guarantee you 100% it will. And that's the way it has to be. That's the mindset I'm talking about. Is it hard? Yeah. Does it feel great all the time? No. And I'm not one to sit here and say, hey, kumbaya, it's let's all hold hands. No, you have to get out there. You have to get, in the nitty gritty. You have to move forward. You have to get your numbers in line. You have to do things that typically restaurateurs don't really like. But when you get through the weeds on the other side, there's always sunshine after the storm, so to speak. So, that would be my message to you.
Tom, we do have a question, and thank you for that motivational story there. One question we had in the chat was, in light of COVID, with all of the pressures other restaurants are under right now, how would you recommend for restaurateurs to motivate their employees during this time and really help build morale where there's low tips, sales are down, they're concerned about longevity? How can we really help, or what tips can you give to restaurateurs to really boost that morale?
It's a great question. And, some personal experiences and what I've seen. And I think it's first and foremost is being open and honest and looking at your staff and leaning on one another and letting them know, hey, you're in this with them, and asking them for the ideas also, and if you can, step in and maybe provide meals or provide us a place, maybe it's a place for the, the families to, use it for, anything really. Where I was going with that was really like using a table for schoolwork, probably not the best idea because you can't really sit down. But just helping them in any way. If you're closed from 9 a.m. till 12, maybe that's the time to have them bring, people in and do that. If it was it's a family. Restaurants are family, and I always look at it like that. What would you do or not do for your family? And some of those decisions are painful, but I think being open and honest by getting everyone involved and giving what you can, and telling them, showing them the data. Hey, you know what? Look, the trends are going up. it's not going to be the same tomorrow, but we've been through tough times before. We just need to get through these, X amount of period. And this is what I think is going to happen. And I really think just that open, honest conversation is really just what a lot of people want to hear, because if you don't know what you don't know, just like
Sure.
the numbers, if you don't have the data, how are you going to make decisions? So by just being honest and saying, hey, look, gang, it's tough right now. I feel it. You feel it. What do you need? What can we do? Offering a meal every day that helps, or a day, or
Mhm.
inviting if you can't, maybe you can give them extra food for their family. It's
Sure.
really, it's really whatever the resources you have and what they have. Maybe they're able and willing to do something, or hey, you know what? I have a truck. I could ship that stuff up to, and sell on this corner. Hey, my church is doing this thing in their parking lot, and they have an extra stand. Why don't we sell some prepackaged stuff there? So it's leaning on one another, and once everyone feels a part of the solution, I think you'll see some good results.
And Tom, one of the things, just to add to your point, I know quite a few, a lot of kids going back to school with distance learning. There are definitely communities that are lacking Wi-Fi access. So I have seen some restaurants open up their doors to the children of their staff, or even the community, so they can use the Wi-Fi of the restaurant to do their schoolwork because they don't have that access at home. So that's another value added um, that restaurants have been able to do during COVID for their staff as well as the communities they serve.
Yeah, 100%. And if it's really, it goes back to the individual restaurant. Whatever you're capable of doing and feel comfortable doing, I would say go for it. I mean, what harm could come out of doing good? You're going to get good press. I know that the Mark Boucher, the owner of Medium Rare, he's providing meals for schools, and he's partnered with other restaurants, with lockers, with all kinds of things to distribute
Mm-hmm.
these. So I mean, if that's volunteer, whatever you can do to
Mm-hmm.
get that positive energy going again.
Yeah, but we also had several restaurants in the county partner with Jose Andres World Kitchen during the start of the pandemic. So they were partnering with him to provide meals, especially to those who were most vulnerable in the community. So our elderly, they did probably, I think it was about 200 meals a week. One restaurant, excuse me, a day. One restaurant did for about 6 weeks. So it was a great benefit to them. Another question in the chat box was, are you in favor of possible profit sharing to help a creative way to pay the staff?
Yeah, whatever works for your particular situation. And think about it. You may have people on your staff who have hobbies that maybe so now we have these restaurants that are not being able to set. So let's say you have someone who bakes cookies or someone who makes crafts. Maybe you can work with them to sell those things in your restaurant or through your website, and really just make it a community effort where everyone's feeling, because it's I don't think it's just a feeling anymore of, oh, that's a restaurant. At least in the neighborhood where I'm walking around, it's more of a community center. It's more of where people still come and meet, whether it be 6 feet apart with masks or not. I mean, well, that's the way to do it. But I mean, before it was a coffee shop and you're sitting, people are still need that connection. Human beings need connection. So,
Mhm.
if you can provide that through any means, whether it be, providing your Wi-Fi service, providing a medium to sell other products that matters, but your staff is benefiting from them, or, whatever it takes, it's there. That's a resource in your SWOT analysis. That is something that you own, that you pay for, that you can provide to your staff or your community for a number of reasons. And I'm telling you, it'll come back tenfold if you have that mentality.
One other question for restaurants, outside of labor, one of the biggest expenses is rent. And a lot of restaurants are really struggling, especially coming out of COVID during the shutdown, being limited to takeout or to go orders. What would be your recommendation to those restaurants to propose to their landlords for a long term strategy for rent relief?
Yeah, another great question, and it's a question that comes up not only in meetings like this, but even on the legislative side, and you know, in our internal groups, we have these conversations, and I'm not a legal expert. There are some good resources out there. Again, I'm going to refer back to getting to the professionals, but it's if you're depending if you're a single standalone restaurant, obviously you got to deal with it yourself. But if you're in a strip mall or you have other people that you can pair up with, then you can go in as a collective unit, um and bargain that way. But it's definitely rent abatement, or I did it with my restaurant in 2008, and basically we had a busy season and a slow season, and I was able to renegotiate at paying a higher rent during the busier times, and a
That's a
lower
great
rent
point.
during the slow times. And it really depends on the landlord. It depends on a lot of things, but having your information in line, your compassion, and a plan, and not just going and say, hey, and saying, hey, you know what? If I can get through month 6, and this is where we're looking, this is how our sales are becoming, and you know, if we could just reduce, hey, everybody reduces by 25%, then we can definitely still be here 4 years down the road. But it's getting the help from folks like at the EDC and folks at the SBDCA, and then talking to the landlord. Get your so-called ducks in a row and make sure you have your facts, and just go forward. It's happening. It's happening in a lot of places, because this is not only a national phenomenon. This is a worldwide phenomenon.
Sure. So proposing a plan to your landlord, going in with your numbers, and supposed to just stating that I'm not able to pay the full rent, and having a plan of action for the full year is what you would recommend.
Oh, 100%. Yes. Thank you for summarizing my rambling.
No, no problem. No problem. Not rambling at all. Uh, all right, there's those are all the questions that are currently in the chat box. So if you want to wrap it up for us.
Yeah. So what I would do, things to do immediately is again, if you aren't scheduling time for yourself and your business, schedule it. Conduct a realistic assessment of your financials and your financial health, and decide, for yourself. For me, I did not like doing numbers. So if it's a bookkeeper, they're surprisingly, affordable, because you can do them at all different levels. And you may have someone in your own organization who is in school for accounting, who, has the know-how to do the basics. And you only need a so-called bookkeeper or CPA, once a month. Um, Look at your new break even. What does that look like, and what does it look like moving forward? Meaning, like, as businesses are allowed to get more and more seating percentage, so to speak, inside the restaurants, and how does that look in 60 days when it gets cold outside and you lose the outdoor seating? Um, Stay on top of your economic and regulatory developments. As you see these, if you have, what I've heard of personally through some restaurants is, when that first round of funding came out, they weren't able to get it because they didn't have some of their numbers in line.
Mhm.
If that's your case, get them in line today. So if this new round of funding comes out, you're ready to rock and roll, and you're looking great. Um, and understand, if you have those loans or grants, what the compliance is, and then look out 30, 60, 90 days, and what do you think you need in your business, and move forward. And I'll leave you with one more: is, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. If you can't, the guy who makes cabinets, the wood maker, always says, measure twice, cut once.
Mm.
So just look at where you are and make realistic, assessments. And again, I'm not one to say, all things are peachy and fuzzy. It's tough out there right now. But when you're in control, when you see the numbers, at least you can make great decisions. And some of those decisions may be ones you don't want to make, but you have to make. And I think we did a lot of question answering already, but if anyone else has any question answering, I don't know, Nicole, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Sure. One of the questions in the chat box is, would you recommend restaurants propose subleasing some of their space to other companies, or bakers, or utilizing the ovens at night, or to a startup company to help mitigate costs?
It's a great question, and it's happening, and I would say 100% yes. And that may be, part of your agreements with your landlord, that you may have to get an adjustment um, to your lease.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a great, in that plan. You could be, hey, you know what? We're right here, and I only need X amount more money a month to really, feel comfortable. If you could reduce the rent, and I can bring this other company in to sell this, basically subletting, then I know I can make it, and we can reevaluate this in 6 months. As I mentioned, I wasn't clear, but there's, if you buy bulk food, like if you're buying from Saval or US Foods or something, you're getting these big packages of different foods. And what one restaurant did was they paired up with Saval, and they were able to sell them like things like mozzarella sticks, stuff they didn't usually sell, but they were able to repackage them and then sell them, so-called retail. So yes, as far as a baker goes, 100%. Especially if it's something that you sell already, like if you're getting buns every day for whatever you sell, maybe looking at the baker and saying, hey, you know what, I noticed that, you know our guest would love to have a French baguette. They would love a loaf of bread. Do you mind if you sell those to us at a reduced cost so we can resell them at retail and see how that goes? Yeah, I mean that's that question is the mindset that you need, to get through this. Is anything, whatever it takes, and go out in your neighborhood, go out into other restaurants and see what they're doing. Don't reinvent the wheel. If someone's already doing a great job and being successful, figure out how they're doing it and copy them. It's okay. I've copied a lot of people in my life. I've had a
It's a
lot of
form of
mentors.
flattery.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
Now, one quick question, and that's a great segue to the next webinar session of how to pivot during COVID to different revenue streams. One of the other questions that came up was when you're looking at your menu from a revenue standpoint, several restaurants I know have taken less profitable items off the menu and have really revamped their options because of labor costs, food costs. Some of the higher end, high labor menu items have gone away. What will be your recommendation for that?
It's a great point, and 100%. I would do that wholeheartedly. I would get rid of things that aren't, working for your company. I take it a step further. If your shift has shifted to go food, I would also look at what things travel well. You know,
Mm,
French
great
fries
point.
don't travel well. Maybe you're making macaroni and cheese now, and
Everyone
that.
doesn't eat them in their car on the way home like I do. My fries never make it home.
Yeah, or or hey, listen, we don't, here's your fries for your car ride, but here's the mac and cheese when you get home. It'll stay nice and
Mm,
hot because it's 100% looking at all those different things, and by reducing your menu items, and again, we get into this in the next few seminars. It's the messaging, it's the packaging. As long as you're communicating to your guest and to your staff of what and why you're doing it, most people are pretty reasonable, if not all people, and will say, I understand that. And if you have that outliner who's just like, I need to have my shrimp fettuccine, you know, and maybe that's something that you do a one-off where, you have extra time one day, or you have a shrimp fettuccine cook-off and you make him the
mhm.
judge,
Yeah.
on downtime. So
Mhm.
yeah, by looking at every little aspect of what you can do to bring guests back and get your name out there is all a good cause.
Awesome. Awesome. So what we'll do now is we'll give everyone a chance. I think we're going to take everyone off mute if there's any additional questions, if you wanted to ask directly to Tom, but we appreciate all the questions in the chat box. We really do. If you have a question, just raise your hand. One question for you, Tom. How often should companies or restaurants do that SWOT analysis?
Yeah, so the SWOT analysis is a tool. Like any other thing in the toolbox, you use it as much or as less as you deem fit. Like I would say, as a SWOT analysis during these times, you're doing SWOT analysis on different items. For instance, retail versus selling a bottle of wine, either retail or not. Um, you can run that, and then looking at your break even, increasing revenue. It's hard to answer that in a specific question because it's SWOT analysis is used in so many different
Mhm.
aspects. And again, sometimes you're doing a SWOT analysis in your head and you're not even realizing it.
Yeah, yeah. One of the other cost saving measures I've seen companies do. I'm a buyer in my previous life, so always think of economies of scale. So there are some restaurants, especially if a restaurant group, or to your point, if you have a shopping center of a couple different restaurants, would you recommend them doing kind of a group buy to help with that economies of scale as much as they can? So of course, with your salad fixins or some similar items, like everyone uses onions, I put garlic in everything. So I could probably
Right.
buy a bushel of garlic from my house. But what are some of those different things that you can recommend as a collective that restaurants might be able to do and kind of build a cohort so that way can then lower their costs on from a buying standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, if it's possible, absolutely. If you have those great relationships, do it. If you don't, build them. And also look at other aspects. Who else is hurting in your community? Do you have a local farmer? Do you have a local butcher shop that you could possibly, walk in there, introduce yourself, and maybe, get a great relationship? Because it's those little things, because they have, X amount of people that shop from them. And now, oh man, John down the street just, bought all this burger meat from me, and it was so great. And now, it becomes this big local community. It's like, it seems like everything is reverting back to the way it used to be, where
Mm.
everything, instead of being shipped from hundreds of miles away, everyone is starting to see, what can I do in my community? And again, I'll preach it again. It's community. It's about relationships.
Gotcha, gotcha. The other question was, uh, if I own instead of leasing my space, do you recommend refinancing and possibly extending my mortgage?
Yeah, again, I'm not a tax person, but I would definitely, again, you asked about the SWOT analysis. Here's a great thing, write down all your pros, all your cons, all your threats. Um, owning the property is definitely has a lot of advantages. Um, it's also has some disadvantages. You just can't get up and
Mhm.
walk away. You have to sell it. But I think owning your property also allows you to do a lot more flexibility, i.e., subleasing, changing your methods, doing whatever you want really, because you own the property. So
Mhm.
I would definitely, if that's if especially with the interest rates that they are right now, is something I would definitely look at, and do a SWOT analysis, and present it to someone at the EDC or at the SBDC, and have them give you a second opinion.
Yes, we definitely have resources available to those who are either looking to open a restaurant in the county, extend their restaurant, expand their restaurant, as well as come into the county with the new ideas. We're a food destination right here in Prince George's County. We have a ton of opportunities, as well as our mentoring program as part of the Emerge Stronger. We can sign up. We have signups, I believe, in the chat. We have a link to sign up to speak with a counselor one-on-one on Mondays. So we have a ton of resources available to business owners and entrepreneurs in the county, just to help you, talk through some of those questions, as well as provide resources, whether it's with lending, financing, or even with your business plan through our SCORE partners that we can refer you to. Thank you for that, Tom. Any other questions before we wrap up? Well, great. Well, thank you everyone for your time today. As we said, this Emerge Stronger is in sponsorship from Pepco Holdings. We appreciate them for providing the opportunity for such dynamic dialogue as well as content from industry experts. If you have not done so already, please register for webinar, the second webinar of the Restaurant Bootcamp series. It will take you through ideas and plans for pivoting your business. That will be on 2 weeks from today, so on Wednesday, September 23rd at 9 a.m. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for attending, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Great job.